sick, criminals who are enemies of the people and who he said should be investigated for election fraud. Senator Chris Van Hollen is a Democrat of Maryland, and he joins me now. Senator, first let me just start with your assessment of where things are politically 100 days in here. I think early on there was a real feeling among a lot of people watching with horror that it wasn't getting through to the American people just how bad it was, what they were trying to do. It does seem like there's a little bit of a lagging indicator here, but what do you think of where things stand right now?
Well, I think the American people are on to Donald Trump. They've witnessed and experienced 100 days of chaos and destruction. They've watched him tear our economy down, tear our Constitution up, and tear our government apart. And they don't like what they're seeing, and they're saying that loud and clear.
One of the places that I think has been interesting to look at public opinion, and again, these are all imperfect measures, sometimes question wording matters, is on the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the man from Maryland who has been wrongly sent to a prison in El Salvador, the man that you met with in El Salvador. This is a recent Economist YouGov poll. Should Kilmar Abrego Garcia be returned to the U.S.? 50% say yes, 28% say no, 22% say not sure. Were you heartened by that?
I was, Chris, because Donald Trump and his White House have tried to change the subject entirely on this. What they don't want to talk about is the fact that the courts have found that they are violating Abrego Garcia's rights. And as I've said, this is not about the man Abrego Garcia. It's about his rights. And if you trample on his rights, you threaten the rights of everybody who lives in America. And the public clearly gets that. And you're seeing that reflected in the polls right now. And in this case, and even on other issues like immigration writ broadly, Donald Trump is now underwater. But clearly, when it comes to violating people's constitutional rights, Republicans, Democrats, independents all hate the idea of being deprived of your liberty without due process.
Something I think we've also seen both in the polling and I think is a somewhat intuitive idea is that people don't like the idea of a president openly defying the courts. And there's been sort of a strange thing, I got to say, with the case of Mr. Abrego Garcia, where the courts have basically ordered the government to go get him back, and the government hasn't done it. And I want to read to you this exchange in the Time magazine interview in which he's asked about it. Asked if he'd requested Bukele, that's the president of El Salvador, to turn Abrego Garcia over. Trump said he hadn't. I haven't been asked to ask him by my attorneys. Nobody asked me to ask him that question except you. And so it's not clear from that interview whether he understands what the court has said, whether he's been accurately told what the court has said. But do you understand the White House as being essentially defying the Supreme Court right now? I guess I would ask.
Oh, absolutely, Chris. As of right now, the White House, the president are defying a 9-0 ruling by the Supreme Court to facilitate his return because they're doing nothing about that, which is why I wrote to President Trump just today. I pointed out that conversation he gave with Time magazine where he said he's doing nothing. And I reported and revealed that the vice president of El Salvador told me that the ball is in America's court, right? Donald Trump keeps trying to say, we can't do anything about it. El Salvador has to make a sovereign decision. This is all a farce. The vice president of El Salvador said the ball's in America's court, and the only reason El Salvador is holding Abrego Garcia is because the Trump administration is paying them to do so. So clearly, this is entirely within the Trump administration's power to obey the court order, which they are currently defying.
You mentioned at the top of our conversation the economy. We just had a conversation about the tariffs. This is some polling in that NPR Marist PBS poll on tariffs specifically, whether the tariffs are going to help or hurt the economy. 57% say hurt, 33% say help. I'm curious if you think this starts to exert any pressure, basically, on your Republican Senate colleagues. They seem pretty impervious on a lot of other stuff. I don't think they're going to get real wound up around, like, the Constitution and some other things they don't seem to care about. I do wonder if this starts to affect them, and I'm curious what you think.
Well, you're right. They see no bottom. There's no bottom to Republicans in the Senate when it comes to defending the Constitution or Article 1. But they will be hearing from small businesses. I'm hearing from lots of small businesses in Maryland. I'm sure they're hearing from businesses small, medium, and large. And this is wreaking havoc on supply chains and businesses. So we are going to, I think, see the pressure build. I mean, as you were saying, we've already seen the administration flip and flop and, do this one day and do another thing the next day, zigzag. And that, I think, back and forth is a reflection of the fact that they are feeling the heat, but they don't know what to do about it. You would think that you would plan something out before you sow this kind of chaos. They clearly didn't.
Last question to you is how much you think public opinion matters right now, which is to say, as they're trying to essentially end the current constitutional order and replace it with something else, whether people calling their members of Congress, being in the streets, talking to pollsters, whatever, whether that has an effect on what happens in Washington.
I do. And I think you're seeing the public stand up. Remember, bullies like Donald Trump, authoritarian leaders, they calculate that when they come down hard on people or try to silence people, people will shrink into their corners and go away. So this is a moment we all have to stand up, which is why we have to applaud the colleges and universities who are standing up to Donald Trump and shame those who are not. Same with law firms. But I will say, Chris, with respect to Republicans in Congress, it's a very simple calculation. Right now, they're more afraid of a tweet on social media from Donald Trump or Elon Musk than they are the sentiments of their constituents. We need for that to flip in order for them to finally stand up.
Senator Chris Van Hollen of the state of Maryland, thank you so much for your time tonight, sir.
Thank you.
Still ahead.